Randy Roberts Potts, the grandson of Oral Roberts, is going to be talking with us today about his life growing up in the conservative right-wing Christian family with such national prominence. He's talking about what his life is like today and his pet project, the Gay Agenda. So join us this week on shOUT. This episode of shOUT is presented by PACE and sponsored by the 2012 4th Annual North Louisiana Gay and Lesbian Film Festival, taking place September 7th through the 13th at the Robinson Film Center in Shreveport, Louisiana. This year's special guest is Margaret Cho, who will be performing a live stand-up act at the Municipal Auditorium Saturday, September 8th. Tickets are available at Ticketmaster.com. For more information, go to nlglff.org for more details. Randy, thank you so much for joining us today on shOUT. We're really interested in talking to you about your life, the things that have brought you up to this point in your life. We want to talk about the Gay Agenda, of course. But first, before we do that, let's bring everybody up to speed. You grew up in a very conservative, right-wing, religious family, obviously very well known nationally, internationally. What are the memories that you have or that you recall growing up in that situation?
You know, I just remember feeling like the world outside was this scary, dangerous place that we had to always watch out for the devil and always had to watch out for non-Christians. And it was just sort of, there was a lot of fear in that.
Mm-hmm. Would it be fair to say that you probably experienced firsthand that controlling aspect of religion as being fear of loss, fear of being excommunicated?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I mean, I saw a lot of, I guess you could say, like, loving things too, and loving examples of people being nice to each other, you know, because of their religion, but also mixed in with a whole lot of fear too.
Mm-hmm. Do you still embrace a lot of those religious values and mores that you were raised with?
You know, I feel like I haven't changed my values that I grew up with, but I at the same time I feel like I don't like a lot of the language I was taught to use to talk about it. So like, I guess to me sometimes having so many biblical scriptures thrown at me, I still, when I hear certain verses from the Bible, I just bristle and I kind of tense up. So it's not like I've changed my values, but I call it like evangelical PTSD. I still have a little bit of like, you know, that King James language just is a little threatening still.
Let's talk a little bit about your Uncle Ronnie. He was another gay member of your family. Were you particularly close to him?
No, not at all. He died when I was 7, and I have one memory before that of, you know, being with him in my grandmother's living room and laughing with him and stuff. But you know, I was very little, so I really only have one strong memory of him when he was alive.
You did a video, a love letter to him, and that really was probably one of the most emotional videos I've ever watched. It was really something. Has your family seen that?
I would assume so. I mean, I've heard a lot of complaints about it. Whether they've actually watched it, I can't say. You know?
What was your coming out experience like with your family?
In a lot of ways, I really didn't have one. I mean, I never had that classic sit down and, you know, mom and dad, I'm gay. It was I knew they'd just show me the door and say I was going to hell, and so we just didn't talk about it. And I came out to everyone I knew, and we hadn't been talking for years anyway, so we just never had a let's all gather and talk about this. We gone back and forth on email and in phone calls, but never had that classic sit down. And I didn't want that. I knew it wasn't a safe place for me to be, and I just decided there was no reason to put myself in that situation. It was too scary.
But obviously, they've been in touch with you since you have been. Really, you are now much more of a public person. Certainly, with some of the appearances that you've done on the Joy Bear Show and other national networks, I mean, surely they've responded to.
A little bit. The only person I've heard from in years has been my mother, and that's only about every other year. And it's always very negative and angry, but it's very limited. We really don't talk very much.
That must be a very heavy burden to carry at times, to be Oral Roberts' grandson. Even the mention of Oral Roberts conjures up such a strong image for many people about evangelical Christians, and that I guess you might say persecution. When Soul Force was going to universities, Oral Roberts University was one of them that they visited. That I just can't imagine what that experience must have been like, or is today for you.
Yeah, it's still weird. I was on TV just yesterday, and then when I watched it later, there's a big intro of Oral Roberts and calling me Oral Roberts' gay grandson, and sometimes it's strange because I just feel like me, but then to the B, I'm Oral Roberts' gay grandson and all this kind of thing, and it's a weird, I just feel like me. But
yeah. Well, in your process of coming out and obviously getting you were married at one time, and you have 3 children. How do you describe your family life now? Is it much different than it was years ago?
No, I mean now I'm married to my husband now, and when I come home, the kids and my husband and I, we all have dinner, we watch a movie, and in that respect, it's the same. I mean, I enjoy it a lot more, and I'm really happy to be with my husband, but it doesn't feel like it's night and day at all.
Has becoming a public figure been a smooth transition for you, or it has not?
No, I'm pretty shy by nature, actually, and my friends will attest to that. And making that video was like it was reading my closest letter I'd ever written, like a diary page, and I just did it on a spur of a moment and put it on YouTube, and it was pretty terrifying. And it's been a slow process of trying to acclimate to, oh my gosh, people want to hear me talk now, and I have to get up, and I'm getting used to it, but it wasn't something I ever wanted to do. So I'm getting better at it, I guess.
What about your It Gets Better video? Was that really, I guess, basically your coming out moment nationally?
Definitely. Yeah, I hadn't ever spoken publicly ever in my life, and making that video, just putting it on YouTube, I thought maybe a few, 100 Facebook friends would see it, but it went viral, and I think it's something like 150,000 now or something. And
right.
That was when people started watching me. It really freaked me out for a while.
Now, besides being speaking on behalf of the gay community, equality, and that kind of thing, you write, and you also are a blogger.
Right.
And that's a really good medium for you. You feel real comfortable with that particular medium?
I do. I've always wanted to be a writer, and I've always written privately at home, like stories and things like that. But it's now I kind of have different blogs that I keep up and do social media, and yeah, I really like that. I really like having a voice, especially in written form.
One of the things that you've done as part of your advocacy work and getting the message out there about equality is the Gay Agenda Project. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about and what the process has been?
Yeah, one thing that I think about a lot is how do we reach the younger generation of evangelicals, and especially in red states, in smaller communities like Biloxi or Jacksonville, Florida. how do we reach those people? And I think that, for instance, gay pride is a great way for us to all get together and not feel alone, but it's not really an outreach to people who aren't already on our side. And so the gay agenda is sort of a way that I've thought about. It might help with reaching out to people on the fence, because we go into small communities and we set up in a storefront and live as either a lesbian couple or a gay couple, just eating dinner, watching television, that kind of thing. And it gives people in those small towns a little view of what we're like, and it's a subtle, message that we look just the same as you when you're at home. And to me, it's just I think I'm hopeful that the gay community will continue to try to reach out to people that aren't on our side with messages that are respectful of their communities, if that makes sense.
So you have an interesting story about how this whole idea came about. How did that happen?
Well, I had this dream about, I guess, a year ago, and I woke up from it, and it was this crazy dream where my husband Keaton and I were living in this glass box in Central Park, New York, and in the glass box there was like a kitchen and a living room, and we were vacuuming, and we were watching TV, and we were eating cereal, and everybody in Central Park was, walking around and looking in on us in this glass box. And I woke up and I was like, that's the craziest dream. And then I just, over the next few days, started thinking about, if you did a thing like that, say in Central Park in New York, nobody would really care because people are very used to gay people being out there. But then I thought, well, what if you did something like that in, Shreveport, Louisiana? What if you, did something like that in a town like that? People would care. And at the same time, what could they really be upset about? Because if all you were doing is vacuuming and sweeping and eating breakfast, you couldn't really get angry with you. So it just seemed like an idea that maybe could be an outreach. So I started to talk to people and get people mobilized to try to set it up. And a year later, we have several more set up, and it's pretty cool.
Now, the first time you did it was in Dallas. And what was the response of the public?
We did it at an arts festival in downtown Dallas, in a place that's very, very used to gay people. And we did it on purpose there so that we didn't want opposition the first time. We just wanted to do a dry run, like a dress rehearsal. And it was great. I mean, we had a lot of outpouring of support, people really interested in walking by and loving it. I did see, though, a woman with her, I'd say, 10-year-old daughter. They stopped and watched us, and Keaton and I were watching TV, I think, at the time, and they kind of were looking around at the kitchen, trying to figure out what it was, and then they read the sign that explained it, and she grabbed her daughter's arm and marched off really quickly, and it just made me think, wonder what was it that made her feel threatened and have to drag her daughter away, because until she read the sign, nothing was bothering her.
Right.
So it was an interesting kind of thing. And that was in Dallas, and then the next time we did it was in Oklahoma City, which is a much less, say, liberal, accepting environment.
Right.
And that was interesting as well. We had a lot of support from the gay community, and we did a a live webcast of it, and people were pretty interested. I think it started a lot of discussions. So we'd like to keep going to smaller and smaller towns, but also want to be careful that it's a safe thing to do.
Right.
You don't want
it would seem to me that watching someone go about their daily routine at home, watching TV, eating cereal, vacuuming, whatever, has to be probably one of the most mundane things to watch. I mean, and when I was thinking about that, I really get it. That is what the agenda is that it is the same mundane life that everyone else enjoys.
Right.
Would you say that that's accurate?
Absolutely. It's the most boring thing you could ever watch. People move on after a few minutes because there's nothing to see. And that's really the subtle message is that, I think Dan Cathy imagines we all have horns and pitchforks and we're trying to destroy civilization. And if he checked in and watched the gay agenda for a few minutes, the real gay agenda, he'd get bored and turn the channel on the television. And that's really the point, is that we're pretty boring, and our lives, some people in the gay community dress different ways or whatnot, but we all have the commonality of, we might drink coffee in the morning, we eat cereal, we eat pizza, we watch TV. So those things that we all share as Americans are the same whether you're gay or straight.
What is your take on this whole Chick-fil-A debacle? We found here in our area that most people really wanted to cling to this being an attack on First Amendment rights or not allowing someone to have an opinion, and we've all worked very hard to say this really isn't about that. People can have difference of opinion. What this is about is the financial support of a hate group. In your area, did you have that same type of issue?
The same issue, right? And it's I agree with you. It's not about that at all. But the same. That's how a lot of people have tried to spin it. And I think seeing pictures of it reminds me of that moment in the late African American civil rights movement where segregation of schools was starting to end, but you had thousands of white people flocking to capitals with their signs saying, my daughter won't be going to school with a black person, and worse words, of course. And they all had this feeling of solidarity, like, it's our freedom and our right to not send our kids to school with black people. And looking back, we see how horrible and hateful it was. But to them, it was about freedom. And I think it's the same way with the Chick-fil-A thing. They're saying, well, it's free speech and everything. But what is that speech? And that speech is hateful speech about gay people. And it's hateful speech about gay couples and gay families like mine. So, people I've talked to, I think if you can sit down with someone, they get that. And looking back, I think those people are going to be very embarrassed, say 5-10 years down the road. Right. Yeah. And I think that there are even younger people that are already kind of embarrassed of, say, their parents going to Chick-fil-A to protest this stuff. It gave them their moment in the sun, but I also think in the long term it's really backfiring or going to.
Yeah, most definitely. Randy, thank you so much. We're out of time. I appreciate you taking time out to talk with us today. Good luck on the gay agenda, and hopefully we'll be able to see that in Shreveport sometime soon.
That would be great.
You have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
I want to thank our guest today, Randy Roberts Potts, for visiting with us and giving us his take on current events and letting us know what's going on with the gay agenda. And I want to thank you for tuning in to this particular episode of Shout. Thank you, and have a good week.